Driving. Just to say we're about to start recording, which is perfectly on cue. My name is Alex. I work for Centre for Sustainable Energy. I'm going to be kind of facilitating today. But before I go into much more detail, I want to hand over to James Johnson from the Northwest Net Zero Hub, who's going to say hello. James, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Welcome all to this introduction to community energy. Very grateful to you all for giving up your evenings to hear about this. We've invited groups that have contacted the Northwest Hub to learn about community energy. Some of you may have been in the sector for a while and hope you get something out of tonight, but we really want to explain what community energy is to newcomers to the sector. We're in a fortunate position of having some funding at the moment from the department, and we'll be we're running around of funding at the moment. Many of you would have expressed interest in that funding. The first wave is happening at the moment, and there'll be another wave in the spring. So hopefully tonight will gear you up to think about what you might achieve. I'm just going to share my screen, which is going to be a bit of a fumble. And I'll just say very briefly a little bit more. If only my slides were here. They were, now they're not.
That's the wonders of Zoom.
Yeah, here we go. 2 more seconds. So yeah, the funding from the government is regionally based. Tonight we're going to hear from Community Energy England, who are a member organisation helping existing community groups. We're going to hear a history of community energy from them. We're going to hear from 4 Northwest-based projects about what they achieved or are trying to achieve across some different areas: transport, solar, wind, hydro. We've got time then to speak to those groups about what they do, so we'll be going to some breakout rooms. And at the end, we'll wrap up and discuss what we've learned. I'll say a little bit about the community fund if we've got time, but tonight is more about, you know, engaging with the sector and meeting each other. We do this as part of a program called Community Net Zero Pathways. So we're offering a fund, and for groups that are ready, that's available. Where groups aren't ready, we want to support them with materials to educate them. Tonight is a webinar as part of that, and we've got some more to come, which we'll be emailing you about. I believe we've already named the next webinar in our invitation materials. So we're talking a bit about forming a community group and how you kind of shape a project's feasibility. And we would like to do a big face-to-face event in April, May or June. We may do that with Community Energy England. We also work across the Pennines with the other half of the north of England. And we want to get groups talking, because a powerful way to make this happen is for groups to speak to each other about what they've done. We previously ran a fund called the Rural Community Energy Fund, and you can find on our website those projects, some case studies. The new fund that we're running is for urban and not just rural groups. There's material on our website about what the scope of that is and what it can fund, if you want to find that there if you haven't already. We want to network across the whole of the Northwest, but we're also encouraging networking through kind of counties and combined authority geographies. So Lancashire have a great network of community action on net zero, and there are other examples that Cumbria Action for Sustainability work and draw people together. So we hope to put you in contact with other groups if that's what will help you form your project. We do other work in this space. Some of the funding we've got here is around energy advice. We can't fund through the community energy programme retrofit advice for vulnerable households. That's being funded through other means like redress funding. But we are asking if groups want to work on energy efficiency programmes in neighbourhoods, and that might have a kind of a business case, and some of that funding could come from the community. There is an option to fund that through this fund, which is novel, which hasn't been fundable before. I'm going to hand over now to Phil of Community Energy England. We've worked with CEE to produce this top 10 guide to getting started on community energy. Don't want to steal his thunder though, so I'll hand over to him now.
Lovely, thanks very much for that. And actually, I'd forgotten that top 10 guide, so that was a good pointer. I'll find that after I'm done, and I'll put that in the chat with the links. So yes, hello everyone. My name is, let me start my time. I'm Phil Coventry. I am Head of Operations at Community Energy England. And let me share my screen so you know what I'm going to talk about. Great. Is that okay for everyone? Good. Lovely. Let me just move things around on my screen. Great. So yeah, thank you very much for the invitation to speak tonight. I'm going to run you through the history of community energy, a little bit about background to what it is, help you kind of understand how it fits into the broader energy system, and then I'll talk a bit about the sort of support measures, a bit about the funding, and a little bit about Community Energy England as well. Lovely. So to introduce ourselves, Community Energy England is the membership network and representative body for community energy in England. We were founded in 2014 by practitioners within the community energy sector to act as the voice of the sector and to help ensure that community energy organisations are able to create new projects and play an active and important role in the energy transition. Our membership is now over 285, the vast majority being community energy organisations, about 250 of those from around the country, and we have many other supportive stakeholder groups, companies, local authorities as well, things like that. All that we do is intended to help clear obstacles, create connections between practitioners themselves and between them and stakeholders, and facilitate the work of community energy organisations. Basically trying to help the sector grow is what we do. We have a various range of events every year. We conduct research on the sector, we provide guidance and host an online forum to enable practitioners to meet and share. And then we also act at that political level, trying to influence politicians, MPs, national and local government officials, network operators, make them all aware of community energy and try to create a supportive policy landscape. So background to community energy for those who are new to it, and very warm welcome to community energy if this is your first foray into the sector. Community energy refers to the delivery of community-led renewable energy, energy demand reduction and energy supply projects, whether those are wholly owned or controlled by communities or through a partnership with another organisation. So in short, community energy is a sector which puts people at the heart of the community, of the energy system. In practice, what does that mean? It's got quite a lot to it. The sector is very broad and diverse. Community energy provides accountability, participatory governance within the energy system. It seeks to be empowering, transparent, and equitable. It accelerates the transition to a zero carbon energy system while increasing community resilience. And it includes communities which may otherwise be excluded from the energy system. It's much more than this. Building a zero carbon energy system is a social issue that requires a just transition. Community energy organisations are already at the forefront of energy system innovation, initiating behaviour change, accelerating the decentralisation of the energy system, reduced carbon emissions, upskilled communities across the UK. The sector is broad and has achieved a lot already. Just to sort of be clear, there are three main types of activity within community energy. There is energy generation, so renewable energy from hydro, from solar, from wind turbines, a little bit from biomass, and then there's energy efficiency and retrofit. So that's changing the fabric, installing things in houses and buildings to make them more energy efficient, use less energy, and kind of that's known as retrofit. When you take an existing building and you try to improve it, it's kind of a score in terms of using less energy. And then there's providing energy advice. So that means talking to people in the community, trying to help educate them about how the energy system works, how they can use less energy usually. And that's often aimed at particularly vulnerable people and trying to combat and reduce fuel poverty. Community energy is very spread out and is all over the country. It can be quite hard to kind of gauge and understand its impact. This slide is from research that we did in 2022 using 2021 data, and some of those numbers on there can kind of give you an idea of what the sector can achieve. We'll be redoing our research in the coming months, so we'll have some fresh figures very soon. And the impact of community energy is significant when it's added up, but it's the combination of impact which is what's key to community energy and why it's so important. I am going to go a little bit fast. So some of you will be very familiar with graphs like this about what needs to happen to our carbon emissions. That's the background to community energy. We know from previous research that climate change is a really strong motivating factor for people who are involved in community energy. And I'm sure you'll all be much more familiar with net zero now than people were 15 years ago when community energy was getting started. Then they were pioneers and trailblazers. Now, obviously, net zero and climate change has become much more central to the public discourse. So that has changed in terms of the landscape for getting people engaged in the energy system. But as the next graph will show, or the next diagram, the energy system is extremely complicated. This is a national grid diagram, and it's actually a simplified version of the energy system. So all of these things here in terms of power stations, pylons, houses, cars, it's all connected in a way which is extremely complicated. And that's just the hardware. That's before you even get into kind of how you use energy, how you engage with suppliers, how the benefit system interacts with energy, how vulnerable people and people who don't have strong English language skills can interact with the energy system. So it's an extremely complex world. Any of you in the past who have tried to deal with a problem with your energy supplier will probably know how complicated it can be for somebody who maybe is quite able to do those sorts of things. So imagine what it's like if you find that kind of thing challenging. It's in that world that community energy operates, and the energy system doesn't meet our needs. Again, we're all familiar with energy price sort of crisis rises over the last couple of years, and that's the background in which community energy is trying to operate. Remember what I said before about putting people at the heart of the energy system? These headlines don't suggest that that's what our energy system does. That's not how it was originally built. So community energy is trying to change the status quo, trying to change the energy system. I'm going to skip through some of this because I am enthusiastic and speaking more than some of my slides will allow. And so why is community energy important? So why take this approach? So you have a little bit of interest. Obviously, if you're here, you maybe know a little bit about community energy, but why really is it important? So we think it's very important because of some of figures like this. This comes from the Climate Change Committee, and it basically means that we can't get to net zero unless people are engaged in climate change. That means in changing their behavior, changing the way we use and generate electricity and energy, and particularly heat as well. So it's essential that we get people involved, and that's what community energy does at its heart. This is from our wonderful hosts, the Centre for Sustainable Energy. The diagram here is quite simple and just shows some of the aspects when you start getting involved in the energy system that need to be considered to enable a just transition, because all of these things will be affected as we move to a more digitized, a more decentralized, a more electrified energy system. And again, community energy takes the impact on people as its starting point, as it's building its responses and engagement with the energy system. And what else can I say? So the importance of community energy is backed up by what it can do to build extensive networks, to be trusted by vulnerable people, to avoid wasted effort and inappropriate infrastructure when people haven't been considered and included. It's very effective at delivering information and advice to people on the ground, partly because of that trust that it can build up very easily, much more so than large energy suppliers and other organizations within the system. And it gives people a tangible stake in the energy system. So when people are involved, when people have a share in the community energy organization, or when they are engaged by energy advice, kind of cafe or something like that, it means they feel like they have a stake in the energy system, and we know that that really transforms engagement, understanding, and behaviors. So if you are thinking about getting started, or maybe you already started and you're kind of interested in doing a bit more, what can you do? So the first thing I would say is that community energy is a movement. It's across the country. This is a map that we produced which shows the information about the sites and installations. This is far from complete because there's so much activity and installations of renewable energy from the community energy sector across the country. It's quite hard to gather all of it. So this isn't 100% complete, but it does show you how widespread community energy is all across the country. This is communities active all over the place doing things in community energy. So if you are up here in the Northwest and you're thinking about getting involved, don't forget that you are part of a national and in some ways international movement. So I would really encourage you, as the national network that we host, I would really encourage you to get involved and sort of see yourself as part of a movement. And that means there's also lots of expertise and knowledge. So other people and organizations in the sector have been doing this for 10 or 15 years. So there's a lot of expertise and knowledge out there about how to do community energy. There's no need to be a pioneer now. You can kind of follow the excellent example that's been set by other organizations and gain a lot of knowledge and understanding to help you do what you want to do now. And that leads me to the Community Energy Fund, which is a great new step. It was introduced by James, and of course, that's why one of the reasons we're here tonight. So we've been advocating for communities to take charge of their energy future for a long time, and we've been lobbying the government to help the sector grow by giving funding, particularly for that early stage, to help get projects going. And the Rural Community Energy Fund ended last year. James mentioned that as well. And there were recommendations from people like the Environmental Audit Committee that community energy is important and should be helped and prioritised. And we campaigned alongside other organisations like Power for People, who were working on the local electricity bill, for increased support from the government. And we're very pleased and grateful that the government has sort of listened to that and come up with the Community Energy Fund as a starting point. So in terms of the importance of the fund, there is a background to it, which is it's very important that we use it. That's partly to show the government how much demand there is out there for community energy to do things, get active, increase the scale of what it's already doing. So using this funding is really important. So I wholeheartedly encourage you to take up the opportunity that's presented by it, by helping get the projects and services that you want to start off the ground. And we know that goal to draw down the money and make use of it is very much shared by the Net Zero Hubs, which is one of the reasons that we're all here today. Other funding opportunities that I just wanted to talk about. When you get started in community energy, the funding landscape can be pretty complicated. There's no denying that. One of the things I would say is that it's important to look both at the local level and at the national level when you're thinking about how to get more funding more broadly for your organization. It's unlikely that the Community Energy Fund will be all of the funding that you need, and there'll likely be different types. It depends on the stage of your project, so the stage that you're getting the community energy funding for. We know that it can be quite difficult to get feasibility and early stage funding. So I would particularly say that that's why the Community Energy Fund is very useful and valuable to the sector, but there are other sources. We collate all the funding that we know about for community energy on our website, so that's one place to look. And the ones that I've listed on the slide here are just a sample. The reason I've sort of picked those up are basically to illustrate that there are some regional funds like Electricity Northwest. So that's in this part of the world, in the Northwest. They're the distribution network operator, so they own and run the cables that take the power all over the place. And they have a Powering Our Communities fund. So that's a regional opportunity which you have access to, which other people don't. There are national funds. James mentioned it earlier, but the Energy Redress Scheme, which is quite focused on fuel poverty and energy efficiency work. But that's something at the national level that you can apply for. There are things in the National Lottery like Awards for All, and there's People's Postcode Lottery. There's something called the Green Heat Network Fund, which is coming on stream in a couple of months, which will help with working on heat, which is ambitious, but is definitely something that is needed from community energy. And just to sort of step back, when funding the installation of large capital projects, so when you're trying to put solar panels up, for example, and you want to fund one or two more installations of those, the main community energy funding source for the sort of the capital side of actually building something is community shares. So that's where an organization issues shares to make available to the general public, they become a member of that organisation. They have some share capital, and their interest payments are paid over the years, and then that will be the full amount will be paid back in 25 years. So that's the main way that community energy organisations raise capital, and is one of the key differentiators for why they're different to commercial operators, because they have that engagement with the community. They can, again, that's part of what I said earlier about giving people a tangible stake in the energy system. I'm about to come up to my time, so I would just quickly, I'll skip over the vision. This is our lovely vision slide, which talks about what the future of community energy could be. The 2030 vision is something that we produced a few years ago, and you can find it on our website if you're interested in what we think the sector can achieve over the longer term. And then I'll lastly finish by just encouraging you to take a look at Community Energy England. We have a lot of resources on our website that will help you get started, the funding opportunities that I mentioned, and we also encourage you to join us. That will help you get involved in the network, meet other people, and sort of figure out how you can get started by tapping into all of that expertise which exists across the country. So yeah, lastly, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I am happy. I did put in any questions. There we go. Any questions if anyone has any for me.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Phil. Much appreciated. Lots of really great info there, and also great to see the smart and fair lens. Always exciting. Does anyone have questions? And if you do have a question for Phil, could people pop their hands up, and then we can kind of come to people in an orderly fashion? If you aren't able to speak, you could also write in the chat, and we'll pick that up there. So, any questions for Phil? I'm not seeing hands, so I'm presuming either there's no questions, and Phil's done a great job. Cool. Oh, how do you raise your hand? There you go. Well, that's a very good one. So at the bottom of the screen, you should all see a button that says reactions. There's a small smiley face with a plus at the top. If you click that, you should then be able to get an opportunity to raise a hand. So Rachel,
there's one question in the chat which we can take. So where do local councils fit? Great question to get us started. So community energy is a very collaborative sector, and it's very important when thinking about how to get started that you think about who you will need to talk to, get involved with, and might partner with. Local councils, we know it can be pretty tricky. We've always found it very hard to give advice about local councils because they're so different. One of the things we know about is finding the right person to speak to is very important. So if there is a sustainability officer or a climate change officer or something like that, that can be your way in. It may be that you need to speak to many other people within the council to get a project up and running, because if you want to put solar panels on a council building, then you will need to be involved with the legal department and the estates department, things like that. But basically, local councils can be a great partner to enable community energy because they have lots of sites. They have a kind of this all of their public interest motivations and requirements. So the key thing that we have heard about over the last few years, which organisations are really getting good at, is looking for things like the climate change strategies and other documents like that the council themselves have produced. Read those, see what they've said about their targets and commitments, and then position your community energy project or service in those terms to basically show the council that if they partner with you or give you funding, that you can help them achieve the aims that they themselves have committed to, and do it easily and cheaply and potentially without them really having to do a whole load of stuff. So that's a way of approaching them, which I would sort of recommend as a starting point. But yeah, finding your way in is essential, and then they can become very good partners with things like sites and funding.
Cheers, Phil. I just clocked, James, did you want to come back on that point? Because Rachel's waiting, but if you want to come back on that point about councils.
It was on that point. I think the hub is also trying to educate councils about the sector as well. Lots of councils in the Northwest are very engaged, some less so. So part of the work we're doing in the next year is to try and open the door wider for community groups to talk to councils. And if councils may be on the call, because we're hoping to talk to them, they can really galvanise community action. If they can invite communities to operate on their sites, becoming an opportunity recently is for power purchase agreements between community assets into public buildings, or from so it's tricky, it's got legal implications, it takes a lot of decision making, but local government can really support community groups. It's been shown to work.
Thank you, James. Rachel White.
Oh, hi. Yes, thanks very much. Tim's actually partly outlined what I was going to say. Tim's a neighbour, councillor at neighbouring town to us, Sandbach, and we have already spoken about, working together. Basically, I feel quite overwhelmed by this topic, but I think it's very important. It's knowing how to start, but the top 10 guide for getting started looked very helpful. I mean, Alsager is flat, it doesn't have a river, it doesn't there's no hill we can put something solar on top of, a wind turbine on top of, so I'm not quite sure how we're going to manage it given our geography. Any tips?
Yeah, I was going to say also, just to flag, Rachel, shortly we're going to have some presentations from some local groups who have tried some different things. So just in terms of your point about getting started, hopefully there'll be some tips there. But did anyone want to come back, either Phil or others, on Rachel's kind of question about top tips?
It is, come back on that. Is that working? No, that's not working. Let me try again. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, great. Oh, good. So all I would say is don't necessarily be fully focused on generation. It is great when renewable energy generation is a focus of community energy organisation, but there's a lot of other projects that are becoming more possible. So looking at the retrofit side of things in terms of I know it doesn't matter what the topography of your town is like, you've definitely got a load of buildings. So looking at how they can be retrofitted, looking at the models that are out there in the community energy sector. I think there's an organisation in London that has an LED lighting service. It's paid for, so it generates its own returns. That they've been going around sort of retrofitting LEDs. They've built up a service. There are organisations in Manchester and other places that are creating retrofit services, and to sort of refit buildings and install what's needed. And then there's also the energy advice and fuel poverty side of things. So trying to understand the most vulnerable people in your town. I'm sure that the town council has that sort of remit and is involved in that already. But getting out into the community as this trusted source of guidance and trusted, if someone from a community energy organisation comes to the house of a vulnerable person, they are much more likely to be trusted to help do some draft excluding and change the light bulbs over to LEDs than almost any other organisation. So that's a way you can start getting into this, because there will definitely be an enormous amount that needs to be done in your town, because that's the country we live in. There's a whole load of things on there, and that's before you get into heat, which Kate will be talking about a bit later, but that will also be hugely needed in terms of changing the system over to something that's low carbon and works for everybody. So yeah, don't be scared of heat. It's a big challenge, but I would say that's somewhere to look as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. So I clocked, we had Adam come in on the chat, and then we've got a hand up as well. But Adam Bamping, did you want to say yours out loud? If not, I'm happy to read it.
Yeah, hi there, everyone. I was just seeing, what companies do you work with regarding, future technologies for carbon reduction?
Thanks. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by future technologies?
It's like microgrids, and basically the technologies that are out there are constantly changing, and there is a lot of technology out there now that a lot of people won't see.
Adam, I'll field that one first, if I may. So the purpose of the funding we're making available to groups is for them to think about their options, and some of that can investigate innovation. It can't be innovation for its own sake, because we really want to encourage projects to come forward that can be delivered. But what the hub will try and do with a group that expresses interest is have a conversation with them about other types of projects, sound them out. We've got some expertise in our team, and so if it's a new technology, we might be able to help you scope a bid in for the funding to explore it. We don't tend to direct people to companies per se, because that's something communities need to find for themselves, but we can help them identify technology areas, and also when they go out to suppliers to provide the feasibility, that can be a process of discovery around the sort of services that are out there. I hope that answers the question. We're not just focused here on solar, wind. We do care about grid and batteries and storage. If you can kind of come forward with a project that has potential, the fund's broad enough to accommodate that.
Yeah, I can. Well, that's part of my job, so I can get quite a lot of information on that and bring it to the area that I live in anyway.
Brilliant.
Thank you. I will just take one last question. Leslie, is it Leslie or Paul?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Despite what it says up there, Leslie is my wife's name, and somehow it's infiltrated my laptop, but I don't know. Yeah, my name's Paul Guymer. And so I just want to say a little bit more about funding, because it is quite difficult to get funding for, installations, capital projects. And community shares take you so far, but recently we found it's quite difficult to raise money through a community share offer. I mean, we did quite well, but we didn't raise it last time, but we didn't raise enough funds for the entire project. So we've gone to a source which I don't think you mentioned, which was the Key Fund, which is and we've managed to acquire a loan/grant. So we're getting about £85,000 loan at a 4% interest rate over 7 years. And with that comes a £15,000 grant. So if anybody's kind of looking for funding, that's probably a good place to go, because I think they're looking for projects, and they're quite keen on projects that produce renewable energy, I think so.
Thank you, Paul. And you're also going to be speaking a little bit more in a moment, aren't you?
Yeah, sure.
We'll come back to that, but thank you. Great. So I suppose just to say that we will be sending out slides and bits and pieces afterwards. I'm hoping Phil's quite happy for us to send out the slides he just presented. And it sounds like interest in that link for the top 10 tips, Phil, might also go down quite well. So we'll make sure everyone gets hold of them. But like I said, so essentially we've got 4 speakers now, or presenters, or I don't know what people want to refer to themselves as, but essentially people who are from the Northwest, who have been through some of the trials and tribulations of setting up groups, and I'm just going to say a little bit about that. So I'm going to hand over now to Kate Gilmartin, who's going to talk to you about Rossendale Valley Energy Solar Project. Over to you, Kate.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, let me just share my screen. Sorry.
It's all right. Zoom seems to have changed relatively recently, so it's all slightly different.
Right, so hopefully you can.
Yep.
Yeah, let's move that out of the way.
We've got your presenter view though, just so you know.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, is that good? Yeah, can you see that, Alex? Thank you.
Good.
Okay, thanks very much, Alex. I'm Kate Gilmartin from Rossendale Valley Energy. I'm a non-exec director there, but I recognise quite a few people on the call. I used to work for Northwest Net Zero Hub with James, and I ran the Rural Community Energy Fund there. I've also been involved in community energy for a number of years. I was actually a founder member of Community Energy England as well. So this is our project, our journey to net zero. I'm going to whiz through because I think I've only got about 5 minutes, so it's a bit of a fast-paced run through. But we are a community benefit society, so like many other groups out there, set up as a community benefit society, and our mission is to reduce carbon emissions, build community resilience within the net zero transition, and also address fuel poverty. We've talked about local councils. We work really, really closely with Rossendale Borough Council. I think they're the 5th smallest local authority in the country, so they have very, very minimal resources. So we are there to really kind of partner them and bolster them in their ambition around their net zero targets as well. So we've got 2 main projects. One is called the Net Zero Terrace Streets project, and Phil mentioned earlier that's about heat. We're looking at a whole community decarbonisation heat, and we've got a couple of innovation funded projects going on there. I'm not going to be talking about that, although if you do want to speak to me about that, my email's at the end, and I'm more than happy to run through that with you at a separate time. This part of this particular presentation is about the solar co-op as well. So we're looking at doing solar across different buildings within Rossendale as a part of a community solar cooperative. Just very briefly on the Net Zero Terrace Street, I mentioned this is a whole system solution. So we're looking at the technical solution of shared ground loops or boreholes that would go in the street and be shared across a terrace homes. We're looking at the financial solution. So we're working on a model which means that people can connect to the ground source boreholes at no upfront cost, and the debt sits on the infrastructure of the boreholes, and people have a standing charge, and this includes the fabric retrofit for their houses as well. We're looking at the grid solution, so we're working with Electricity North West, and one of our innovation projects is looking at the smart local energy system. So it's how basically the grid, your local substation, interfaces with this whole system community decarbonisation project. Engagement, we're working with Centre for Energy Quality on a Fairer Warmth app, and it's a way of reaching people, engaging people, and retaining their interest as they go through that decarbonisation pathway. And then we're also looking at the governance, which is all about kind of a local community benefit, community wealth building model, where future benefits of the decarbonisation the Net Zero Terrace Street stay local and keep reducing bills. As you know, we pay a lot less per kilowatt hour for our gas than electricity. So part of our Net Zero Terrace Street project has to look at how we subsidise the cost of power, that pence per kilowatt hour that people pay for their electricity. So that's where the solar project comes in. We're basically looking to do the solar cooperative, which will help us reach that affordability of energy for the communities that are participating in the Net Zero Terrace Street project. So we've been doing a lot of work to identify and talk to businesses across Rossendale to see whether they're interested in having community-owned rooftop solar. And what's really interesting about Rossendale is you've got lots of family-owned businesses. So I would just say one top tip is to try and work with people who've got that kind of decision hierarchy is quite short. So, you go and talk to Tesco's, it's going to be really difficult because you've got this enormous long hierarchy of decision makers. Whereas actually, if you talk to someone that's in a family business, they can quite quickly get to the person who makes decisions, and they will get you in front of that person, and they will say whether they're interested or not. So it's really great working with locally owned businesses where you can speak to the owner of the building. We have now got we've done feasibility on about 15 buildings. We've narrowed it down to about 5, and we're ready to go with 2 of those businesses. The idea is that we rent or lease their roof space or the land, and we would install and own as a community benefit society the solar. We will then sell the electricity that we're generating on their roof or on their land to that business at a discounted rate. So they get the benefit of knowing they've got a fixed price for the solar. So it's kind of a good hedge in terms of their future energy costs. So usually you'd work on a 15 or 20-year agreement with them. The capital costs for the solar are paid for through raising finance through a community share issue. And a community benefit society is very distinct in that it is registered with the Financial Conduct Authority, and we are allowed to issue shares through a community share issue. We offer a modest rate of return for our investors, so usually about 3 or 4%. and any profit that's returned goes into a community benefit fund. So it's kind of a three-way split, really. The business owner or the building owner gets a discount for their electricity. The people who invest get a small return, and it's an ethical green investment, so they know where their money's going and they know what's happened to their investment. And then the community gets a return through the community benefit fund. We're also, as part of our Net Zero Terrace Streets project, working with a company called Urban Chain, who are a Manchester-based company, tech company really, and they do what's called a peer-to-peer local energy market. So basically, any electricity that's not used by the building, that's going to be exported to the grid, we're actually going to sell that into our kind of local energy market, which will be people within our Net Zero Terrace Street project, part of that energy club. So it goes back to that original point that I said, that we've got this cheaper gas and electricity, so electrifying heat, that affordability is a big problem. So we're trying to address that with this kind of local energy market. So the two projects that we're taking forward, we've got one that is a ground-mounted scheme. So you can see the area here. It's actually on the land of a chemical factory, just outside of Accrington. So it's in Rossendale, and we're going to hopefully be able to. They're going to be able to use about 79% of the electricity we'll generate in their factory, which is good because it means that we'll be able to sell directly to them, and we'll get a premium price, and they'll get a discount from the electricity that they would usually buy from the grid. And the second project, which is a roof-mounted scheme, which is about 480 kilowatts. So it's a fairly substantial amount of electricity that we'll be generating across the two sites. And we'll look to have to raise about 1.5 million to actually afford the capital for the installation. So our next steps, we've been working with Dave at Share Energy, who's going to be talking to you about the wind project. We've been working with Dave to get us this far. And the next steps are we put an expression of interest in for the Community Energy Fund with the Northwest Net Zero Hub, and we want to secure some finance to get us into planning and to get us over the kind of final hurdles that we've got in terms of getting the grid connection secured. We've done a lot of work looking at how we sell the electricity to the building owners, so something called a power purchase agreement, and we've got heads of terms for that. And ideally what we want to do is actually look for more sites as well, because the more sites we have, the less risk we've got if somebody pulls out, for example, but also just across the suite of buildings, it just means that we've got a bigger portfolio as well. So that was a bit of a whiz through. Please do take my email, and I'm more than happy to catch up with anybody at a later date or indeed in the breakout room. So I will stop sharing and hand back to you, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of questions to follow up with there. Thank you. And like Kate says, in a minute, she's going to be in a breakout room, 20 minutes. And anyone who's interested in probing a little more can find out more, but also you can follow up, and we'll share Kate's details and slides later. So there was a gentle segue through there into Dave Green, who is going to talk to us a little bit about Southport Wind Turbine Repowering Scheme.
Okay, can you see my slide, Alex? Great. Okay, so I'm Dave Green. I'm Development Manager at Share Energy. I also happen to be Treasurer of Shropshire and Telford Community Energy, so I wear many hats. I've been asked to speak. I'm not from the Northwest. We do a lot of work in the Northwest, but Ed from Zero Carbon Liverpool wasn't available tonight. So we've been... So we were asked to look at this wind turbine, which is on a sort of environmental hub building in Southport. It was fitted around the millennium and hasn't worked for at least 10 years. So it's a very bad advert for renewables. So we came up with the idea of replacing it with a much larger turbine. We managed to get an RCEF grant, 2 RCEF grants for it in 21 and 22. We've done consultations with the local community. We've done a wind constraint study. We've done a financial and technical case for replacement wind turbine, and consideration of how we can support the local leisure centre. And the idea is that the electricity from the wind turbine would feed into the leisure centre. So we've got a site here don't know if you can see my mouse, but the environment centre's here. The leisure centre's up off just to the north east slightly, and the wind turbine is the yellow, would be the yellow dot. If you know Southport, this is Victoria Park just to the east, and the purple bit out there is basically the sea or mud. It's a very good wind site, and we looked at various sizes of wind turbine. The current one is actually it's quite tall for a 20 kilowatt turbine, but its output, even when it was working, was ridiculous. But we were pushing to go for a 1 megawatt wind turbine, which would have been about 80 meters to the tip. Some people have been asking why we didn't go bigger than that, why we didn't do a Lawrence Western and go for a 4.2 megawatt wind turbine. But that's yeah, I think that was felt to be a bit much for this location. But, and also, if you go over a megawatt, then the environmental regulations you have to get through are much stiffer. So we've had ecology studies done, bird studies done, noise studies. We've had a landscape and visual impact assessment done, all the rest of it. We've done the finances. It would appear to work quite well. Having a leisure centre buying a significant proportion of the electricity is really helpful. And the deal was that the council, we wouldn't pay the council much rent because the benefit they would get would be from the reduced price of the electricity for the leisure centre. So, and we've been working with council officers for over 2 years. We had a reasonably good response from a pre-app. It was decided that this is a repowering scheme, so the planning guidance that makes wind turbines very difficult to get into planning doesn't apply because it's repowering. So we've been doing a lot of work. We've done consultation surveys. We had a public exhibition last summer. We talked to ward councillors, anyone and everyone. We've done a survey that showed very, very strong positive support. And we were just in the process of submitting a planning application. I've been pressing the council for the last year, basically, to sign an agreement for the site. And eventually they revealed last year that a proposal for a hotel for the site has been put to them, and they've given the developers 2 years to work out their proposals. So at the moment, the community turbine is dead in the water, I'm afraid. So I didn't want to leave you on that depressing note. So Dan and Alex said I could speak very briefly on the Bishop's Castle project, which is actually an identical wind turbine, but this time it will be connected to a heat network. Now, Bishop's Castle's not in the northwest, it's in Shropshire on Welsh borders. It's off the gas grid. It's a sort of place that would be very difficult to do deep retrofit and fit heat pumps to. So we're looking for a large-scale heat network. We've got a leisure centre and a school and maybe 100 houses, that sort of thing in the centre of the town. Getting rid of oil boilers and oil tanks, huge reductions on carbon emissions. Using air source heat pumps to deliver most of the heat, with oil boilers for backup and top up. But heat pumps just would not be viable if we're buying the electricity from the grid. The price of electricity, the price differential between electricity and gas is just too high at the moment. So we need renewables. They're essential for the viability of the scheme. So proposal is to install a 1 megawatt wind turbine and 500 kilowatts of PV. And we use thermal storage. We could generate most of the electricity we require. Now, here we haven't got a repowering situation. We've spent 2.5 years basically getting permission to ask for permission for a wind turbine, with some help from some Dan Stone, I have to say, was very helpful on this a year or so ago. We finally managed to get the site mentioned in what's known as a place plan, which unfortunately most areas don't have. And so we can put in a planning application. So we've done some visual impact assessments, and we're ready. we're ready now. We've had a bit of money, not from RCEF, but from the Next Generation scheme run by Power to Change. But we're just in the process of putting in a stage 2 Community Energy Fund bid to the Midlands Hub. And if you want to see us on telly, we were on the Channel 4's Great Climate Fight last November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. I suppose just to say, for anyone's benefit, people who hadn't clocked, Dan Stone is my colleague from CSN. He's the person who put all of this together. So Dan is also here today, and is our kind of resident wind expert. So he'll be in a breakout room with Dave shortly for anyone who's interested to find out more about wind. So I'm going to just move on to our next presenter. So Eamon Hennessy is going to talk to us about Charge My Street.
Okay, we'll just do the business.
Can't break the streak, Eamon. It's all sharing what fine up to now. There we go.
There we go. So you can all see that, can you?
Yeah, I can see it. Got it.
Superb. I'll just see if I can see my notes. There we go. So yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting me along. I'm Eamon Hennessy. I'm a project manager at Charge My Street. I'm also a councillor on Kendal Town Council and Westmoreland Furnace Council, so I have an interest in this from that angle as well. So Charge My Street is an electric vehicle charge point operator. We are a community benefit society, a social enterprise, meaning that any money that we make is ploughed back into the company to further our aims and our ethos. We were originally set up in 2018 by one of our directors, Daniel Heary, who together with a group of friends had identified that their desire to own an EV wasn't matched by the available infrastructure, especially in rural areas. Our first charge point was installed in Alson in Cumbria after much haranguing of the council and asking the community to pop their hands in their pockets. And there it was agreed that there was scope for the model to be grown and to be rolled out across other areas as well. We now have around 200 charge points, mainly across Cumbria and North Lancashire, but also have others dotted around the country in various places like Ebbsfleet and Birmingham and Bath. Unofficially, we are the largest charge point operator in Cumbria, and we have numerous projects on the go with a view to expanding our network over the coming years. Our aim is relatively simple. We want there to be a charge point within a 5-minute walk of every household, and we tend to concentrate our efforts in areas where there is little off-street parking and therefore an inability to install chargers at home, and in rural areas which are typically neglected when it comes to many aspects of what we who live in more urban areas sort of see as being standard provision, like 5G, broadband, public transport, and of course EV infrastructure. At the end of the day, the big players like BP aren't going to stick a load of charge points in the back of Beyond, as their model is based purely on profit rather than necessarily serving a community. So this is where we try and jump in and fill that gap if the community has stated and is willing to support that need. There are various ways that we identify potential sites, but the main one is via our website. So a community group or an individual can suggest a potential site via our website in Cumbria, Lancashire, where we concentrate our efforts, or indeed nationally. We carry out an initial desktop feasibility study looking at the availability of electricity supply, accessibility to off-street parking and levels of EV ownership, whether the proposed site is open to the public, and the availability of broadband, or crucially, especially in this part of the world, the reliability of a 4G signal in order that we can communicate with the charge point. Once we've agreed that the site is feasible, we look to obtain quotations for the required works and work with the community to identify any pots of money which may provide some co-funding. Funding is obviously key. At times in the past, we've been able to fully fund charge points via grant funding we may have received for specific types of projects, for example, or if we feel that a charge point is going to be particularly well used and of great benefit to the community, then we would look to fully fund it. Other times, as I said, we will identify potential grant funding that the community itself may apply for, or we would look to plug any shortfall. One of the most successful ways of raising funding, and one which helps to demonstrate that community is committed and invested in the idea of EV in infrastructure is by way of our community share offers. Using these, groups or individuals can pledge financial support either to a specific charge point or to our company in general in return for shares in Charge My Street and membership of Charge My Street. These can be withdrawn after 3 years with a modest yield and are also eligible for 30% tax relief. The key here is that the community itself is demonstrating the feasibility of a charge point by putting their hands in their pockets, making them more likely to use it, spread the word about it, and as we rely to an extent on an army of volunteers to help us keep our network up and running, to act as charge point champions who are able to carry out very basic resets of the charge point should something go wrong. We also work with local authorities offering consultancy service regarding EV infrastructure, and we've worked with Lancaster, Wigan and South Lakeland councils and others, providing an end-to-end install and management service. We are always on the lookout for funding relating to innovative and sustainable projects. We've sourced funding via Electricity Northwest and the Energy Redress Fund for a project relating to solar charging, and have upgraded several of our existing sites which have solar PV in place, enabling users to select a lower tariff to charge their vehicles when there is spare capacity. This reduces reliability upon the grid, offers a sustainable solution to drivers, and there's an economic saving of around 25% when they choose to charge up sustainably. There are, of course, drawbacks to this. We live in the north of England, after all, and charging a vehicle from solar, if there's no battery storage available, can take a little longer than usual. But battery storage is another area we are looking at and beginning to work with in relation to several of our existing sites. This all sits alongside a rather newer project that we've just started working on quite recently, which is bidirectional or V2X charging. This is a facility which allows a vehicle to put energy back into the local grid, for example, into a community centre. This is especially important in rural areas, which can become isolated in times of extreme weather, for example. Bidirectional charging would enable you to plug your vehicle in, pump your spare energy back into a building, allowing for kettles to be boiled or mobile phones to be charged. Ideally, our aim is to have EV chargers, solar panels, with storage and bidirectional charging available at all our sites, as we feel these facilities would vastly improve community resilience, empower rural and smaller communities at a time when many are struggling. In addition, there is also the possibility of selling solar generated energy back to the grid, which could provide income from a sustainable source to the site host. Finally, I'll just touch on the environmental impact of Charge My Street. That's a picture of Jonathan Ross there using one of our charge points in Lancaster. As you can see, we've saved over 270 tonnes of CO2 in the last year when comparing EV miles with those driven by a standard internal combustion engine. We're supporting a renewable generation at 6 sites as we speak, and have built up a network of community volunteers numbering almost 100 who help spread the word re-electric vehicle charging and keep our network up and running. So that's a whistle-stop tour of Charge My Street. I'd welcome any contact from anyone who would like to know more. Indeed, suggest potential sites to us, and in my role as a councillor, if I can be help provide any guidance to anybody as to how to interact with councils, which I know can be difficult, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Thank you, Eamon. And there'll be an opportunity to that in about 7 minutes' time in the breakout room. So last but not least, we've got Paul Geimer, who's joining us to talk about Congleton Hydro. Over to you, Paul.
Okay. Okay. So have you guess you can all see that?
Yep, all good.
Right. So yeah, I'm Paul Geimer. I'm a director of Dane Valley Community Energy, and I'm gonna talk to you about a community-based hydro scheme in Congleton, Cheshire, that we developed, and the plans that we've got for the future. So you can see, first of all, a little bit about Dane Valley Community Energy. Obviously, we're a community benefit society. We're a non-profit. We are run by our organised by a steering committee of about 9 directors, each one with a responsibility. So I'm the chair, we've got a secretary, we have a finance director, a technical director, health and safety director, and so on. We also have, in total, we have about 30 volunteers, and they're involved in kind of day-to-day operations. So we have a team which does the inevitable untrashing of the intake rack, and that happens about 3 times a week in the I guess mainly in the spring and the autumn, when we get a lot of debris in the river, and we have a team that's solely does rewilding of the site, maintenance of the landscape on the site, and then we kind of have a maintenance team for the actual hydro itself. So let me see if I can move this along. Right. So here's a up-close photograph of the screw itself. 2.5 meter diameter, 8 meters long, weighs about 15 tons, and the throughput at design flow is about 15 tons a minute. We get the peak power is about 65 kilowatts, and we aim to generate about 250 megawatt hours a year. It's roughly equivalent to the power taken by 60 homes. But in fact, what we do is we sell it because we sell the electricity to a manufacturing site. Actually, it's Siemens, because we get a much better tariff from them. We also have a feed-in tariff, and we forecast an annual revenue of about 70K. So how are we doing at the moment? Well, we've been running about 2 years, 3 months, and we've just gone over. We're actually about 520 megawatt hours at the moment, which it's a bit below. We should probably, if we're meeting our design, we should probably be more like 620, something like that. So we're a bit below, but you can see from the, I don't know if you can see this, you can see my pointer. This is cumulative power throughout the year. We start in October because we started operation in October. So this is the cumulative amount of power we generate through the months, and that's the design. First year we got a little bit worried. The blue line represents what we actually achieved in the first year, and you can see we were way below the target in total. And in April we kind of flatlined because we had a very, very dry summer in 2021, 2022, I guess. Yeah, 2023 we did a little bit better, and in fact because we had a pretty wet summer and then wet July, August, and we didn't finish off too badly. We were about 10% down on design. This year we're doing great. So when you're in the hydro business, you revel in drizzle. Drizzle is the friend to all hydro operators. So what else are we about apart from generating renewable energy? Well, we raise funds from the sale of the electricity to support local community projects, and just a couple of examples. We supported a local rickshaw group who provide guided rides throughout the area for people who have difficulties with mobility. Very often people that live in care homes, so they get around. So we provided some funding for them. We did some work on soft play areas. We've also provided funding for microscopes in schools, various things. So in total, I think we've contributed about £9,000 to community projects so far. We're also interested in promoting other renewable schemes, investing in more solar, more hydro. And also we provide an educational resource to teach next generation. We do group tours. We've probably had about 200, 250 people around the site, guided tours, and we also work with schools. And in fact, we've got a challenge that we're working on with schools to utilize 3D printed Archimedes screws to try and different groups using them, different schools, to try and to maximize the amount of power that they can get out of these things. So trying to teach them about hydropower. How did we do it?
I'll just jump in a second, Paul. You're on your minute warning.
Okay, fine. I'm nearly there.
Yeah.
So we basically we raised the money for the startup with a grant from the RCF, and did the development work. We then raised 700k through a share offer, and various other funding came from a cooperative investment and another grant from the RCF. So that's basically where we got the money. What's next? We're developing more hydroelectric. We're doing community-based rooftop solar similar to Rossendale. And we've done that all with the development grant from the RCF. And we're actually there. We've raised the 476k that we need. And basically the work's going to start in May, and we're going to be installing panels on 9 schools and 1 social club. So that's my story. So be glad to take any questions later.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And I think we'll put people in breakouts. So I appreciate all 4 presenters so far, what you've done in distilling years of hard labour into a 5 to 8 minute presentation. So apologies for cutting you off mid-flow there, Paul. But
no, it's fine. I was there anyway.
Thank you very much. Essentially now what we've got is an opportunity for you to ask some more questions of the people who've just spoken. I think it's probably worth flagging that there's probably a range of experience and abilities in terms of community energy in the room, and what we're kind of seeing is a kind of like formed idea, and some of the projects you've seen are years of hard work, and some of you might not be at that stage yet. I think what we're quite interested in here really is kind of giving you a bit of inspiration, but now we're going to have an opportunity just to go in and kind of probe a little bit more if you want or so wish to those people in breakout rooms. So I believe Dan has them set up.
I do.
Cool. Yep. So I'm going to teach you how to do this because I learned it not too long ago. It used to pop up. So if you click on the More button, there's 3 dots at the bottom. You should get a list of options. One of those options is Join Breakout Room. What's going to happen is when you click that, you're going to get 4 options. So in Breakout Room 1, we're going to have Congleton Hydro. Breakout Room 2, Rossendale Valley Energy Solar Project. Breakout Room 3, Southport Wind Project. And Breakout Room 4, Charge My Street. So the people who've presented those respective groups are going to be in those rooms. It's your opportunity to go and ask questions. I would say if no question is a silly question, and some of these, these groups were some of you at some point in time where they were just starting out. So opportunity to go in there. Have people managed to find that list of breakout rooms?
No.
They have, because they're well, some people have, because they're joining.
You've got a wide screen. It's not in the more dots at the end. It's just in the middle on the bottom line breakout. 4 squares next to each other between captions and reactions.
Oh, yeah.
So I can see people entering. So if you don't manage to enter, you'll be in the middle room, and I will help you enter the room you want to enter. Just to say, people have already started heading in, but Phil from Community Energy England also is going to stay in the main room if anyone wants to probe a bit there. I can see people are entering. Just checking that facilitators have entered, and then I'll join. Are people here because they want to talk to Community Energy England, or because they're still trying to work it out? So they're trying to work it out, Phil. You might get away with it.
Be happy to talk to anybody who remains here after figuring it out. If anyone's stuck as well, you can unmute yourself and ask, and we can probably guide you. Right? People are rapidly disappearing.
I might leave you here, Phil, and join the Rossendale group.
Sure. How long is this segment? Just so I know.
10 minutes.
Okay.
I know I didn't introduce it very well. Everyone's gone, but
Absolutely fine. No, it's just more so I know how long I've got in here if I'm the only one.
yeah, I'll be back. I just want to make sure it's all working well.
Okay.
I'll see you in a minute. Hello all. I hope that wasn't a particularly unceremonious exit for some.
Like Bruce, we were just getting warmed up, but we understand to keep the time.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, 10 minutes was very tight, and apologies for the clunkiness of setting the breakout rooms. Zoom always likes to sense when you've had a long day and throws in some spam. So hopefully,
So I'll just say on that score that if conversations were started that need following on, we intend to keep this network effect going and bring people back together. So it's not the last chance to ask questions.
no, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, I was about to say, essentially, kind of saying in the group, there's some people here who are right, or seemingly right at the end of a very long journey. So people who are right at the beginning, and the kind of piece of work that we're kind of looking at here, alongside James and Ailsa Gibson from CAG Consultants, who some of you may know, is essentially looking at kind of supporting people like yourselves through this process. And I'll hand over to James in just a moment, but just to reiterate again, everything that's been shared today, hopefully we can share with all of you. We can also kind of, we'll follow up with an email with some more details about how you can get in touch with questions. And yeah, over to you, James, to say a bit more about what you're doing in the Northwest.
Yes. Hopefully everyone who's attended this evening has got something out of this, whether you're new to the sector or long serving. As I've said, we want to create a network effect. We had the rural fund, and Kate, who's spoken tonight, worked tirelessly to build contacts and groups on the rural side. We're welcoming urban projects into the fold. We're picking up a thread that was established. The sector's been alive across England for many years. We have this funding opportunity open. I hope everyone here has found our resources online. We can be contacted. We publish information through LinkedIn. The North Eastern Yorkshire Hub, our counterparts on the other side of the Pennines, emailed us this week and said they have some climate literacy training that they have offered to groups in their area. They have some of that available. It's a very short notice because they're looking for bids to close, but we might be able to contact everyone on this group with information about that fund if learning and about climate literacy in your community was of interest. So we're going to keep trying to support with the stories from groups. We'll do more of these events with projects from elsewhere in the country. We might ask you for some feedback about what sort of projects you're interested in. If you want to give us any feedback on today, we work on that. I don't think we have a survey format to do that, but you'd be very welcome to write to us. Our email address is on the materials. We have a mailbox. So please give us some sense if we're pitching this in the right way. We do want to support local government to understand how they can help groups. There's a very fruitful relationship that could be had there, as I said earlier. The Community Energy Fund, we asked for expressions of interest. We can only apologise that first wave closed a few days after the end of the holiday break. We're on a tight timescale. We got a good level of interest in those funds, and we're writing back to groups very soon. Some of you asked for more help to scope your projects. We're looking forward to having those conversations so you can be ready for the next wave of funding. Those groups that have asked for to bid for the stage 1 feasibility fund or the stage 2 project development fund, we've got some good strong projects that we will be coming back to very shortly to ask them to fill out the full application. So that's kind of the current state of things, and I guess I can open up to any questions that any of you have with the time we've got remaining.
6 minutes. I suppose just while people are considering their questions, just to follow on from James there. So we will follow this session next few days with an email with all the details. Everything that James has just said then will kind of include links as well as presentations. I suppose just to flag that we will be running more of these webinars over the next kind of 6 to 8 months. We have a session in the diary for the 1st of February. More details will be in the follow-up email based on that. I can see your hand, Rich. I will come to you. There'll be more details on that where we'll be looking at essentially giving you a bit more of an idea how you might go about procuring technical expertise. So, you know, lots of people, as you go through your project, you're going to need technical expertise different times, carrying out surveys, those sorts of things. And it seems to be something that lots of people have contacted the Northwest Hub about in their initial expression of interest. So we're going to be running a webinar on the 1st of Feb. We'll be showing those details in the follow-up. And then we'll also be doing one on the 7th of March. We'll be looking at kind of governance styles and how to set up community groups and formats to do these sorts of things. So like I said, we'll follow up all of the details and more straight off this, so don't worry about kind of, yeah, process-based questions. Rich, did you want to unmute and ask your question?
Thank you. It was just to ask, I'm sorry, but I'm not certain about the funding that's available at the moment, or which you seem to be sort of a little bit talking about, but not entirely. And there was mention of £10 million to do with the autumn, and I presume that was last autumn. And I just wondered whether there will be continuing funding. And somebody mentioned that there's something will close a few days after this, or after the holiday period. So it's just
we have a website. We'll be emailing anyone who's attended with information about that, and on there you can find the information about our Community Energy Fund. So that's a government fund split into 5 parts around the regions of England. So we've up to 2 million for the Northwest. Well, the first wave of that, the competition has opened. We've asked people to express interest in it, and that expression of interest closed a few weeks ago. So we'll be taking a cohort of groups through that, but there will be more funding next year. And so groups that are beginning the journey will have an opportunity to bid in. You can get early stage funding for feasibility. So ask kind of consultants and advisors to help you figure out what the opportunity might be for a particular kind of project. And then the later stage funding helps groups kind of take that to get it through the legal and the planning hurdles, think about how commercial it might be, and therefore make an offer to their community for that crowdfunding we've been talking about tonight, or another means of bringing the investment in. So please look at our website. And before you're ready for a feasibility study, if you're in the very early stages, you might just want to know what the art of the possible is. And we also want to talk to groups about that who've said, you know, just come and have a talk to us. So we're trying to support that.
Just to flag, James Ailes has clarified in the comments that when you're saying next year, you mean next financial year.
I do apologise. That's awful government speak. I mean the financial year we've got starting in April. So that's not very far away now. So that will run through till March of 2025. That next wave of our programme.
Thank you.
We're recruiting a community energy officer to come and support this programme and be there for groups. We'll be advertising that job very shortly. I'm realising that has to be someone who's an evening person, not a morning person like me, because I'm not used to staying up this late. I don't think I can put that in a job advert.
No, thank you, James. Appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who has stayed up this late. I suppose it's kind of very interesting topic. I'm glad to see so many people keen. I don't think I'm going to drag this out any longer, because I think some people probably do want to go to bed. But essentially, thank you very much, everyone who's given up time. Thank you especially to the speakers who've kind of shared some of their learning. So we've got Phil, Kate, Dave, Eamon and Paul. So thank you very much. We'll be sending out some information from them after this, and like I've said a few times now, we'll send out loads more details, including how you can get more information about some of the stuff that James has mentioned. Yeah. Any final questions? I'm hoping that's a no.
Thank you, Alex, for holding it all together tonight. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you, and thank you to Dan for working behind the scenes. But cheers all, and hopefully see you again.
Yeah, thanks. Good night.
Bye-bye.